In the cold depths of space, where civilizations rise and fall like distant stars, there exists a universal truth that every spacefaring species learns. Never send a distress signal unless you're prepared for what might answer it. The Galactic Council had protocols, regulations, and carefully maintained databases of acceptable rescue services. They had diplomatic channels, approved contractors, and registered emergency response fleets. What they didn't have was any record of the vessels that emerged from the outer rim when the Zalani research station sent their final, desperate plea into the void. The humans had been silent for 3 centuries. The galaxy had nearly forgotten they existed, dismissed them as another failed colony species that probably died out in their isolated corner of space. After all, they came from a world so hostile that the Council had classified it as uninhabitable, a death world where nothing civilized could possibly survive. The Council was about to learn just how wrong they were about what survives on death worlds and what kind of creatures such worlds forge in their crucible of endless violence. Dr. Kessa Vintar pressed her 3-fingered hand against the viewport, watching the stars blur past as the Zalani research station continued its uncontrolled tumble through space. The artificial gravity had failed 6 hours ago, and now everything not bolted down floated in lazy arcs through the corridors. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the cramped research laboratory where she and the remaining survivors had barricaded themselves. "The atmospheric processes are down to 30%, announced Jorik, the station's chief engineer. His thick carapace was cracked in several places, leaking the blue fluid that served as his species' blood. "We've got maybe 2 days of breathable air left, assuming the Krillian pirates don't come back to finish us off." The attack had been swift and brutal. The research station, officially designated as Survey Platform Omega 7, had been conducting deep space mineral surveys in the Outer Rim territories when the raiders appeared. 3 Krillian assault ships had emerged from hyperspace, their weapon arrays already charging. The station's minimal defenses lasted less than 10 minutes. The pirates had boarded with their usual efficiency, killing anyone who resisted and taking what they wanted: medical supplies, rare mineral samples, and most critically, the station's main computer core containing 3 years' worth of survey data. What they hadn't expected was the emergency lockdown that Kessa had triggered, sealing the survivors in the research section while the pirates ransacked the rest of the facility. "Did our distress signal get through before they jammed our communications?" asked Yenna, a young Alterian technician whose normally bright yellow skin had faded to a sickly pale color. Jorik consulted his damaged tablet. The signal transmitted for approximately 47 seconds before the jammers activated. It should have reached the nearest council patrol route, but he paused, his mandibles clicking nervously. "The closest registered rescue vessel is at least 5 days away. We don't have 5 days." The research station housed a crew of 23 beings from 7 different species, all part of the Galactic Council's Joint Exploration Initiative. Now only 9 remained alive, trapped in a section of the station that was slowly losing power, air, and heat. The Krillian raiders had departed 3 hours ago, but not before planting several explosive charges throughout the station's primary systems. It was their standard practice: leave no witnesses, destroy all evidence. Kessa floated over to the communications panel, hoping against hope that something might still be functional. The main array was completely destroyed, but maybe the emergency beacon. She activated her personal tablet and began running diagnostics on the backup systems. "There," she said, pointing to a series of green indicators. "The emergency quantum beacon is still operational. It has a very limited range, but it broadcasts on all frequencies simultaneously." "Including the old frequency bands?" asked Jorik. "Including everything. Pre-council frequencies, military channels, even the restricted bands that some of the older species used before standardization."
Yenna's eyes widened.
"Isn't that dangerous? My instructors always said some of those old channels were abandoned for a reason. They could reach unpredictable recipients." Kessa looked around at her dying crewmates, at the debris floating past the viewports, at the red warning lights that continued to blink their countdown to oblivion. At this point, unpredictable might be better than nothing. "I'm activating the beacon." Her fingers moved across the tablet's surface, inputting the activation codes. The emergency beacon came online with a soft hum that resonated through the station's hull. It would broadcast their location, status, and a basic distress message in 17 different languages, including several that hadn't been used for diplomatic communications in centuries. The message was simple: Research Station Omega 7 under attack, crew in critical danger. Immediate assistance required. Will compensate any rescue vessel. Please respond. What Kessa didn't know was that the beacon signal would travel much further than the specifications indicated. A quantum anomaly in this region of space, caused by the gravitational interaction of 3 nearby black holes, acted as an amplifier. The signal bounced and reflected, growing stronger rather than weaker as it propagated through the void. 14 hours after activation, the signal reached the edge of a solar system that didn't appear on any current Council star charts. It was listed in the oldest archives as the Sol system, home to a species that had been granted Council membership 3 centuries ago, and then promptly vanished into the outer rim. Most diplomats assumed they had died out or retreated to their homeworld to live in isolation. The signal was intercepted by a monitoring station hidden in the asteroid belt of the third planet from the Sun. The station was completely automated, designed to record and categorize any incoming transmissions for later analysis. But this signal triggered protocols that hadn't been activated in over 200 years. Within minutes, priority alerts were cascading through networks that spanned the entire system. Deep space monitoring posts, orbital platforms, and installations on moons and asteroids all received the same message. Alien distress signal detected, immediate threat assessment required. On Luna, in a facility buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface, Admiral Sarah Chen reviewed the intercepted transmission while drinking her morning coffee. At 68 years old, she had served in the Human Defense Fleet for 45 years, working her way up from fighter pilot to fleet commander. Her grey hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her dark eyes held the steady gaze of someone who had seen too many battles. "Sir," said her aide, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, "the signal originates from Sector 7G, approximately 43 light-years from our current position. Analysis indicates multiple species aboard the vessel, consistent with Council exploration protocols." "Council," Chen muttered, setting down her coffee cup. "Haven't heard that name in a while." The Galactic Council had officially expelled humanity from their organization 287 years ago, following what they called the Proxima Incident. Humans called it something else entirely. They called it justice. When slavers had attacked the human colony on Proxima Centauri, taking over 2,000 civilians to sell in alien markets, the Council had offered diplomatic protests and economic sanctions. The human response had been significantly more direct. 3 human fleets had tracked down every ship, station, and facility involved in the slave trade. They hadn't stopped there either. Every organization, government, and individual who had purchased human slaves found themselves receiving unexpected visits from very serious people carrying very large weapons. The Council had been horrified. Such violence was unprecedented in their carefully regulated civilization. They had demanded that humanity cease all military operations immediately and submit to Council arbitration. Humanity's response had been to withdraw from the organization entirely, taking their technology, their trade, and their military protection with them. "What kind of threat are we looking at?" Chen asked. Webb consulted his tablet. "Initial analysis suggests Krillian raiders, sir. The damage patterns and attack methodology match their standard operating procedures." Quote, Tension's expression hardened. She knew about Krillian raiders. Every human military officer did. They were one of the many predatory species that thrived under the Council's diplomatic solutions approach to law enforcement. Rather than hunting down and eliminating pirate fleets, the Council preferred to negotiate prisoner exchanges and reparation payments. Fleet status? 7th Fleet is completing training exercises near Jupiter. Admiral Rodriguez reports full readiness, 18 heavy cruisers, 37 destroyers, and 43 fighter squadrons. Total complement of approximately 15,000 personnel. And the Independents? Webb's expression became carefully neutral. The Independent Fleet was humanity's unofficial response to the more dangerous regions of space. They operated without formal government oversight, using ships and equipment that didn't officially exist, crewed by volunteers who had all signed documentation stating they were on extended leave from military service. Captain Morrison reports that Falcon Squadron is available for immediate deployment. 12 heavy assault vessels, all equipped with the latest modifications. Chen nodded. Falcon Squadron specialized in exactly this type of situation. Their ships were faster, more heavily armed, and far more aggressive than anything in the official fleet. They also had a reputation for solving problems in ways that would give Council diplomats nightmares. Send a message to Captain Morrison. Tell him we have a rescue operation in Sector 7G, Krillian raiders, multiple civilian casualties, and a very narrow time window. Should I include the standard diplomatic protocols, sir? Chen finished her coffee and stood up. Lieutenant, those people sent a distress signal because they're dying. They don't need diplomacy. They need someone to kill the bastards who are killing them and get them home safely. Morrison's people specialize in exactly that. Webb saluted. Understood, sir. Should I notify the council of our response? The Admiral paused at the door, considering the question. The council expelled us for being too violent, Lieutenant. I think they've made it clear they don't want to hear from us. Send the squadron. 3 hours later, 12 ships emerged from Earth's orbital shipyards and formed up in attack formation. To most human eyes, they looked like sleek predators, all angles and weapon ports, with hull plating that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The lead ship, designated HSS Retribution, was over 800 meters long and carried enough firepower to level a small moon. Captain James Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, reviewing the mission parameters. At 34 years old, he was young for a squadron commander, but he had earned his position through a combination of tactical brilliance and absolute ruthlessness in combat. His dark hair was cut short in military fashion, and a long scar ran down the left side of his face, a souvenir from a boarding action against slavers in the Vega system. Jump calculations complete, reported his navigation officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. Estimated travel time to the target zone is 6 hours, 17 minutes. Morrison nodded. Signal the squadron. We're going in fast and hitting hard. According to the intelligence summary, the raiders have already departed, but they may have left surprises behind. I want full battle readiness from the moment we drop out of hyperspace. Sir, said his tactical officer, Commander David Park, should we attempt to establish contact with the survivors before engaging any remaining threats? Negative. Our first priority is threat elimination. If there are Krillian ships in the area, they die first. Questions come later. The squadron entered hyperspace with the kind of precision that spoke to years of combat experience. Each ship maintained perfect formation even as they traveled faster than light, their crews running final checks on weapon systems and preparing for whatever they might find at the destination. Morrison walked to the main viewport and stared out at the swirling patterns of hyperspace. Somewhere ahead of them, people were dying because pirates thought they could attack anyone with impunity. The captain smiled grimly. The raiders were about to learn that there were still some species in the galaxy that took a very personal interest in protecting innocent civilians. Behind him, the bridge crew went about their duties with the calm efficiency of professionals who had done this many times before. The Retribution and her sister ships were instruments of war, designed and built by a species that had learned survival on a world where everything tried to kill them. Now they were bringing that lesson to the stars, one pirate fleet at a time. The hyperspace jump continued, carrying 12 human warships toward a rendezvous that would remind the galaxy why Deathworld species should never be underestimated. In the research station's dying corridors, Kessa monitored the emergency beacon and tried not to think about how much air they had left. She had no idea that a simple distress call was about to bring forth the most feared military force in known space, a force that most of the galaxy had forgotten existed, but which had never forgotten its duty to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The countdown to rescue had begun, though rescue might not be the word the pirates would use for what was coming their way. The hyperspace tunnel collapsed around the human squadron like a closing fist, depositing 12 warships into normal space with barely a ripple of distortion. Captain Morrison's tactical display immediately lit up with contact markers as his sensors swept the area around the coordinates transmitted by the distress beacon. Contact, announced Commander Park. Research station bearing 27 Mark IV. Distance approximately 8,000 kilometers. Station appears to be in uncontrolled rotation and showing multiple hull breaches. Morrison studied the sensor readings on his command display. The research station was a standard council design, modular construction with separate sections for laboratories, living quarters, and engineering. At least 3 of the modules showed catastrophic damage, and energy readings indicated that most primary systems were offline. Any sign of the raiders? Negative on immediate contact, sir. But I'm reading debris patterns consistent with a recent engagement. Looks like the pirates left some calling cards. Lieutenant Kim's voice came from the navigation station. Sir, I'm detecting multiple explosive devices attached to the station's hull. They appear to be inactive, but time-delayed charges, Morrison said grimly. Standard Krillian procedure. They plant bombs and set them to detonate after they're safely away. Make sure there are no witnesses. He turned to his communications officer. Hail the station. We received your distress signal and are here to assist. Please respond. For nearly a minute, there was only static. Then a weak voice came through the speakers, barely audible above the interference. Retribution, this is Dr. Kessa Vintar, aboard Omega. 7. We have 9 survivors in critical condition. Our life support is failing and we detect explosive devices throughout the station. Please advise. Morrison felt the familiar cold anger that came whenever he encountered the aftermath of pirate attacks. 9 survivors out of a crew that should have numbered 20 or more. The raiders had been typically thorough. Dr. P. Vintar, we're going to get you out of there. Can you give me a status on those explosive devices? We count at least 12 charges placed on critical systems. They appear to be on some kind of timer, but we can't access the detonation systems from our current location. Morrison turned to his tactical officer. How long to disarm those charges? Commander Park was already running calculations on his console. If we deploy boarding teams immediately, we could probably neutralize them in 20 to 30 minutes. But, sir, he paused, highlighting several contacts on the tactical display. I'm picking up energy signatures approximately 40,000 kilometers out. 3 ships, running dark but not dark enough to hide from our sensors. Morrison's eyes narrowed. The raiders? Several configuration matches Krillian assault vessels. They're maintaining position just outside standard sensor range, probably waiting to see if anyone responds to the distress call, so they can eliminate the rescue ship and any witnesses in one operation. Morrison smiled coldly. They're about to get a surprise. Signal to squadron. Attack formation Delta 7. We're going hunting. The human warships spread out in an attack pattern that would have been familiar to any Earth predator. They formed a loose semicircle designed to drive prey toward a killing zone. The Krillian pirates had chosen their ambush position well for attacking merchant vessels or lightly armed rescue ships, but they hadn't planned for military vessels with active sensors and aggressive commanders. Sir, should we notify the survivors about the combat situation? Asked Lieutenant Kim. Negative. They've got enough to worry about. Focus on getting those charges disarmed while we deal with the pirates. Morrison activated his squadron command channel. All ships, this is Retribution. We have 3 pirate vessels in ambush formation. Rules of engagement are weapons free. These bastards just murdered 14 innocent civilians and they're planning to kill 9 more. No surrender, no quarter. Execute. The human ships accelerated toward the pirate position with the kind of speed that spoke to engine technologies the Council had never seen. The Krillians had perhaps 30 seconds to realize they were no longer the hunters before the first human missiles reached their position. Krillian Captain Zektar was reviewing the tactical display aboard his command ship when his sensor operator began screaming warnings in their native language. The translation came through his command earpiece a moment later. 12 ships approaching at attack velocity. Configuration unknown. Massive energy signatures. Zektar spun toward his tactical display, his forearms moving in rapid gestures to bring up the sensor readings. What he saw made no sense. 12 vessels were approaching his position, but they didn't match any design in his databases. They were smaller than the heavy cruisers that the Council occasionally deployed, but the energy readings suggested weapon systems that belonged on ships 3 times their size. Origin, he demanded. Unknown, sir. The hull configurations don't match any known species. Hail them. No response to standard communication protocols, sir. Zektar's tactical mind began calculating options. His 3 ships were powerful enough to handle most Council patrol vessels, but these unknowns were approaching with the confidence of predators who knew they held every advantage. Battle stations. Prepare for combat. The first human missile salvo arrived 30 seconds later. Zektar watched in stunned disbelief as his shields simply collapsed under the impact. These weren't standard plasma torpedoes or energy beams. They were kinetic penetrators moving at relativistic speeds, followed by fusion warheads that detonated inside his ship's hull. His command vessel, the Bloody Claw, had survived dozens of battles against Council forces. It died in less than 2 minutes, torn apart by weapons that treated its armor like tissue paper. The other 2 pirate ships lasted slightly longer, but only because the human ships had to turn to engage them after destroying the first target. Captain Morrison watched the engagement from his command chair, noting the tactical performance of his squadron with professional satisfaction. The Krillians had tried to return fire, but their weapons couldn't penetrate human shields at anything approaching effective range. All contacts eliminated, sir, reported Commander Park. Total engagement time 4 minutes 17 seconds. Casualties? None reported from the squadron. The pirates never got within effective weapons range. Morrison nodded. Falcon Squadron had trained for exactly this type of engagement. Swift elimination of pirate vessels before they could harm civilians or escape to attack again. The Krillians had probably expected a prolonged battle against whatever rescue ship responded to the distress call. Instead, they had encountered a military force specifically designed to hunt and kill their kind. Signal, the station. Let them know the immediate threat is eliminated and we're moving to boarding operations. Within minutes, human boarding teams were moving through the space around the research station, using portable disintegrator devices to safely neutralize the Krillian explosive charges. The charges themselves were sophisticated pieces of work, designed to detonate if tampered with by anyone lacking the proper authorization codes. Unfortunately for the pirates, human military engineers had decades of experience with similar devices. Lieutenant Maria Santos, war leader of the boarding team, coordinated the disarmament operation from the station's main airlock. Her team moved with the efficiency of professionals who had conducted similar operations dozens of times. Each explosive device was carefully scanned, analyzed, and then neutralized using techniques that would have impressed the engineers who built them. Last charge disabled, Santos reported through her helmet communicator. Station is secure for evacuation. Morrison's voice came back immediately. Understood. Begin survivor extraction. Santos and her team made their way through the station's damaged corridors. Following the signal from the survivor's emergency beacon, they found the research team barricaded in what had once been a botanical laboratory, surrounded by floating debris and failing life support systems. Dr. Kessa Vintar was the first to see the humans approaching through the transparent aluminum barrier they had erected across the corridor. Her first thought was that these weren't like any rescue personnel she had ever seen. They moved with the deadly grace of professional soldiers, their black armor covered with weapon systems and sensor equipment. Dr. Vintar, Santos's voice came through the barrier's communication system. I'm Lieutenant Santos, Human Defense Fleet. We're here to get you out. Kessa's mind struggled to process the words. Human Defense Fleet? She had studied galactic history, and humans had been expelled from the Council centuries ago. Most beings assumed they had died out or retreated to their homeworld. But here they were, arriving like avenging angels to rescue a Council research team. The extraction went smoothly despite the failing life support systems. The human medical team treated the survivors' injuries with equipment that was clearly more advanced than standard Council medical technology. Within an hour, all 9 survivors had been transferred to the Retribution's medical bay. Morrison met Dr. Vintar in the ship's conference room once the medical team had cleared her for debriefing. She was a Zalani, roughly humanoid but with pale blue skin and large, multifaceted eyes that seemed to analyze everything around her. Her 3-fingered hands moved nervously as she tried to process everything that had happened. Captain Morrison, she began, I need to express our gratitude for your intervention. When we sent the distress signal, we never expected. You never expected humans to respond, Morrison finished. Most people think we disappeared centuries ago. The records indicate that humanity withdrew from galactic civilization following a diplomatic dispute with the Council. Morrison's expression became carefully neutral. That's one way to describe it. The Council called it a diplomatic dispute. We called it justice. Kessa leaned forward in her chair. What happened to the Krillian ships? They were eliminated. You mean captured? Morrison's dark eyes met hers directly. I mean eliminated, Doctor. Those ships and everyone aboard them no longer exist. They attacked innocent civilians, murdered your colleagues, and plan to kill the rest of you to eliminate witnesses. We don't negotiate with pirates. The simple, matter-of-fact way he said it sent a chill down Kessa's spine. She was beginning to understand why the Council had found humanity's approach to justice problematic. There had been no attempt at prisoner exchange, no demands for surrender, no diplomatic solutions. The human ships had simply arrived and eliminated the threat with the kind of efficiency that suggested extensive practice. What happens now? She asked. Now we take you home. Your research data was destroyed, but your lives are more valuable than any mineral survey. We'll escort you to the nearest Council station and make sure you receive proper medical care. And then... Morrison stood up, signaling that the debriefing was over. And then we go back to doing what we do, Doctor, protecting civilians from predators who think the galaxy is their hunting ground. As Kessa was escorted to guest quarters aboard the human ship, she couldn't help but notice the efficiency with which the crew operated. Every system, every procedure, every interaction spoke to a military organization that had been refined through constant combat. These weren't explorers or diplomats. They were warriors, forged by whatever trials had shaped humanity during their centuries of exile. The squadron began its journey back toward Council space, carrying 9 survivors who would have a very interesting story to tell when they reached safety. Behind them, the wreckage of the research station slowly tumbled through space, along with the scattered debris of 3 pirate ships, whose crews had made the fatal mistake of thinking they could prey on the innocent without consequences. In the depths of space, word of the engagement was already spreading through the networks used by pirates, slavers, and other predators who thrived in the lawless regions beyond council control. The message was simple and terrifying. The humans were back, and they were everything the old stories said they were. The galaxy was about to rediscover what it meant to earn the enmity of a species from a Deathworld. The council chamber on Nexus Prime was a marvel of diplomatic architecture, a vast circular hall with seating for representatives from over 300 species, each section designed to accommodate the unique physiological needs of its occupants. At the center, a holographic display could project star charts, tactical information, and real-time communications from across the galaxy. Today, the chamber buzzed with tension as representatives debated the most significant security development in over 2 centuries, the rescue of Research Station Omega. Their 7 survivors had sent shockwaves through the galactic community, not just because of the efficiency of the operation, but because of who had conducted it. Council Prime Speaker Veltar raised his 6 arms for silence, the gesture recognized across hundreds of worlds as a call for order. His species, the Corvani, had held the position of Prime Speaker for over a century, largely due to their reputation for diplomatic neutrality and their exceptional memory capabilities. Honored representatives, Veltar began, his translated voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. We convene this emergency session to address the incident in Sector 7G and its implications for galactic security. Dr. Kessa Vintar, survivor of the attack on Research Station Omega 7, will present her testimony. Dr. Vintar stood at the central podium, still feeling somewhat overwhelmed by the grandeur of the council chamber. Around her, hundreds of beings representing dozens of species watched with interest that ranged from curious to deeply concerned. She had spent 3 days in debriefing sessions, recounting every detail of the attack and subsequent rescue. Honored Council, she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. The attack on our research station followed standard Krillian procedures. Swift, brutal, designed to eliminate witnesses. We transmitted a general distress signal using all available frequencies, including historical channels that had been largely abandoned. She activated the holographic display, showing a tactical recreation of the events. The response came from a squadron of 12 vessels operating under the designation Human Defense Fleet. Their ships were of unknown configuration but displayed technology significantly advanced beyond current council standards. Representative Zara Thull of the Hegemony of Worlds leaned forward in her seat, her crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lighting. Dr. Vintar, are you certain these vessels were of human origin? Our records indicate that humanity withdrew from galactic civilization approximately 287 years ago. I am certain, honored representative. I spoke directly with their commanding officer, Captain James Morrison. He confirmed their identity and made reference to the events that led to humanity's departure from the Council. The murmurs grew louder. Representative Gektar of the Trader Consortium, whose people had significant commercial interests in the Outer Rim territories, stood to address the chamber. What was the disposition of the Krillian raider vessels?
Kessa's pause was brief but telling.
They were completely destroyed, honored representative. No survivors, no wreckage larger than a few meters. The engagement lasted approximately 4 minutes. The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. 4 minutes to eliminate 3 Krillian assault vessels was unprecedented. The raiders might not have been military-grade warships, but they were heavily armed and had proven capable of outrunning or outfighting most Council patrol vessels. Prime Speaker Veltar called for order once again. Dr. Vintar, did the human commander provide any indication of their current military capabilities or their intentions regarding Council space? Captain Morrison was professional but brief in his communications. He indicated that their primary concern was civilian protection and that they would escort us to the nearest Council facility. However, she paused, choosing her words carefully. The crew efficiency and weapon technologies I observed suggest a military organization that has been continuously engaged in combat operations for an extended period. Representative Quindal of the Pacifist Coalition stood up, his elderly frame supported by anti-grav technology. His species had been instrumental in establishing the Council's diplomatic approach to conflict resolution, and his concerns were predictable. Honored Prime Speaker, if these reports are accurate, we face a potentially destabilizing situation. A military force operating outside Council oversight, equipped with superior technology, and apparently willing to use lethal force as a first resort. This could undermine decades of progress in establishing peaceful conflict resolution. Before Veltar could respond, the chamber's emergency alert system activated. A priority communication was incoming from the Outer Rim territories, marked with the highest security classifications. The Prime Speaker authorized the transmission, and the holographic display shifted to show Admiral Kethmore of the Council Defense Fleet. Admiral Kethmore was a Valerian, a species known for their tactical brilliance and natural aptitude for military command. His scaled features showed clear signs of stress, and his normally immaculate uniform appeared hastily donned. Prime Speaker, I must report a significant development in Sector 12A. The Krillian pirate fleet commanded by Warlord Texar has been completely eliminated. All 17 ships destroyed, no survivors. The chamber fell silent. Texar commanded the most powerful pirate confederation in known space, with raids spanning across a dozen sectors. His fleet had been growing bolder and more destructive for years, despite repeated council attempts at diplomatic intervention. Admiral, Veltar said carefully, what force was responsible for this action? 12 unknown vessels, sir. Survivors from a cargo convoy that was being attacked report that the unknown ships appeared without warning and systematically destroyed the entire pirate fleet in less than 20 minutes. The attack pattern and weapon signatures match reports from Sector 7G. Representative Gektar was on his feet immediately. 20 minutes to eliminate 17 warships? That's impossible. Admiral Kethmore's expression remained grim. The surviving cargo crew provided detailed sensor readings. Honored representative. The unknown vessels used weapons technology that treated the pirates' shields and armor as ineffective. Kinetic penetrators at relativistic speeds, followed by fusion warheads. The cargo captain described it as watching predators eliminate prey. Vintar felt a chill as she recognized the tactical description. This matched perfectly with what she had observed from the Retribution's bridge during the brief engagement with the raiders who had attacked her station. Prime Speaker Veltar activated his personal communication device, sending priority signals to key committee chairs throughout the chamber. The implications of these reports were staggering. An unknown military force was systematically eliminating pirate fleets with unprecedented efficiency. Admiral Kethmore, have there been any attempts at communication with these vessels? They complete their operations and depart before our patrol vessels can respond. However, we have intercepted some communications traffic that suggests the pirate networks are beginning to panic. Word is spreading that something new and extremely dangerous is hunting in the Outer Rim. Representative Yulchen of the Border Worlds Coalition stood to address the chamber. Her people lived in the territories most affected by pirate raids, and her expression showed a mixture of relief and concern. Prime Speaker, while we appreciate any reduction in pirate activity, we must consider the broader implications. If these are indeed human vessels, their actions represent a fundamental challenge to Council authority in our space. With respect, honored representative, Dr. Vientar interjected, the human captain I spoke with indicated no interest in Council space or Council authority. Their focus appeared to be entirely on protecting civilians from predators. Representative Quindal's voice carried clear disapproval. And who determines what constitutes a predator worthy of elimination? This approach to justice was precisely why humanity was expelled from the Council. Their methods were incompatible with civilized diplomatic solutions. The debate that followed revealed the fundamental divisions within the Council that had existed for centuries. Some representatives, particularly those from worlds that suffered regular pirate attacks, quietly welcomed any force willing to eliminate the raiders permanently. Others viewed the human actions as a dangerous precedent that could undermine the careful diplomatic balance that maintained galactic peace. Representative Zarathul called for order with a gesture that activated her section's acoustic dampeners. Perhaps we should consider the practical reality of our situation. For decades, we have attempted to address piracy through negotiation, prisoner exchanges, and economic sanctions. Meanwhile, the raids have grown more frequent and more deadly. She activated her personal datapad, projecting statistics that painted a sobering picture. In the past 10 years alone, pirate attacks have resulted in over 127,000 civilian casualties and economic losses exceeding 4.7 trillion credits. Our diplomatic solutions have demonstrably failed to protect innocent civilians. Admiral Kethmore's voice cut through the growing debate. Prime Speaker, we must also consider our intelligence assessment of human military capabilities. Based on the observed performance data, their technology appears to be several generations ahead of our current systems. If they chose to expand their operations beyond anti-piracy activities, he left the implication unfinished. But everyone in the chamber understood. The Council Defense Fleet, designed primarily for patrol duties and peacekeeping operations, would be completely outmatched against an opponent with such technological advantages. Dr. Vintara requested permission to address the chamber once more. Honored representatives, during my brief interaction with the human crew, I observed something that might be relevant to our discussions. They operated with the efficiency and coordination of a military organization that has been continuously engaged in combat for an extended period. This was not a rescue operation conducted by explorers or diplomats. These were professional warriors responding to a threat against civilians. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Captain Morrison made a comment that stayed with me. When I thanked him for rescuing us, he said it was what they did, protecting civilians from predators who think the galaxy is their hunting ground. It suggests that these operations are not isolated incidents, but part of an ongoing campaign. Prime Speaker Veltar processed this information while monitoring the various conversations taking place throughout the chamber. The representatives were clearly divided on how to respond to this development. Some saw an opportunity to finally address the piracy problem that had plagued the Outer Rim for generations. Others viewed the human presence as a potentially greater threat than the pirates themselves. Admiral Kethmore, the Prime Speaker said, "What is your military assessment of our options?" The Admiral's response was carefully measured. "Sir, if these are indeed human military vessels operating at the observed capability levels, direct military confrontation would be inadvisable. Our best estimates suggest their individual ships are equivalent to our heavy cruiser squadrons in terms of effective combat power." Representative Gektar's mandibles clicked nervously. "Are you suggesting that 12 human ships could engage our entire defense fleet?"
I'm suggesting, honored representative, that 12 human ships already have engaged and eliminated forces that our defense fleet has been unable to stop.
The tactical implications are concerning. The chamber fell into contemplative silence as the representatives absorbed the full implications of the situation. For nearly 3 centuries, the galactic community had operated under the assumption that the Council represented the pinnacle of technological and military development. The idea that a single species, expelled for being too aggressive, had surpassed them so dramatically challenged fundamental assumptions about galactic power structures. Dr. Vintar spoke once more, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "Honored representatives, there is one additional factor that might influence your deliberations. During our rescue, I observed the humans' medical technology treating injuries that our doctors considered untreatable. Their engineering teams disabled sophisticated explosive devices in minutes that would have taken our specialists hours. And their ship's performance suggests propulsion and defensive systems beyond our current understanding." She looked around the chamber, meeting the various optical organs that served as eyes for dozens of species. Whatever humanity has become during their centuries of isolation, they have clearly not remained static. They have evolved into something that the galaxy has never encountered before. Representative Yulchin stood once more. "Prime Speaker, I propose that we attempt formal diplomatic contact with these human forces. If they are systematically eliminating pirate fleets, perhaps we can establish some form of cooperative arrangement." "And what if they refuse diplomatic contact?" asked Representative Quindal. "What if their agenda extends beyond anti-piracy operations?" Prime Speaker Veltar raised his arms for final order. "Honored representatives, this session has provided much to consider. I'm establishing an emergency committee to monitor human activities and develop response options. Admiral Kethmore, you will coordinate intelligence gathering efforts with all available resources." As the session concluded and representatives began filing out of the chamber, Dr. Vintar remained at the central podium, staring up at the star chart that dominated the chamber's dome. Somewhere out there, 12 human warships were continuing their hunt, bringing a form of justice that the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. The pirates who had plagued the Outer Rim for generations were about to discover that there were still species in the universe who believed that some crimes deserved immediate and permanent consequences. The careful diplomatic balance that the Council had maintained was about to encounter a force that operated by entirely different rules. Rules written in the blood of innocence and enforced by beings who had never forgotten what it meant to be prey. In the depths of space, Captain Morrison reviewed after-action reports from the engagement with Warlord Thexar's fleet. The pirates had fought desperately once they realized they were facing elimination rather than negotiation, but desperation was no match for superior technology and tactics refined through decades of constant warfare. 17 pirate ships eliminated, 3 cargo vessels saved, and 47 civilians who would go home to their families instead of being sold in slave markets. It was, Morrison reflected, a good day's work. His squadron was already moving toward the next set of coordinates provided by human intelligence networks. Another pirate fleet. Another group of predators who thought the galaxy belonged to them. They were about to learn otherwise. Their SOS brought forth the most ruthless fleet from a Deathworld, HFY.